child play.
You'll have to wait.
Let's do
Does
this.
this never end? Not now.
You read my mind.
Come on. Don't die on us now. More of them. Protect Kiroi!
You got it. All right, here goes nothing.
Not happening. I can't focus.
I'll take a look. Here we go.
You're serious about this, aren't you? Fine.
Will do. Corporal?
Blast
Get ready.
They will fall.
You'll have to wait.
Kiroi! No, you can't. Shit.
Let's see. Now what
I
you...
killed them.
That ritual he performed, what was it?
A sacrifice. He knew there was no time to seal the tomb manually, so he decided to act. Dutiful.
What about the field arg?
As long as we hold the fortress, yes. The world is safe. And as all...
Well, will you be able to...
Yes. The undead took this fortress because we didn't expect their ambush. We do now. As long as we...
What about the stone? We still need it.
Of course, you'll get your stone. Just wait. Here, is this the one you're looking...
It is. Where...
In our treasury. It has been in the fortress since our order was founded. We never knew what it was and assumed it...
Thank you.
Thank me. You still have no idea what you prevented from happening. And here I am, not even knowing your name.
It's Tahar. Yes, like...
Oh, so you're... Huh. I... see. Well, Aenir's blade was never affected by your father's Anyway, all the best on your travels.
Likewise.
Sir Catras, I think we should have a word. Yes, you will get your helmet.
Yes?
What's next?
Just give the word.
Understood. Let's see. Interesting.
Huh?
I'm still wondering what made you leave Kalea and travel the world to study demonology.
You're not letting this one go, are you? Alright, if your life depends on it, I'll tell you. To make it short, I grew up in the slums of Kalea. A shithole if ever there was one. Just imagine an entire quarter made up of half-ruined shacks with the smell of shit and piss everywhere, and way too many people. Then add the tropical heat to it, and you've got the place I grew up. My father had left right after I was born. My mother is what you call a day laborer, though the days when she wasn't laboring outweighed the ones when she did. Whatever job there was, she took it. Even if it was cleaning the shit out of Kalaean canals. She worked hard, but it just wasn't enough. We lived in a windowless room, and I shared a bed with my mother for the first 14 years of my life. Long story short, after a while, my mother simply couldn't cover the expenses anymore. The rent for our room went up, and jobs became less and less, since the Mage Wars in Northander also affected the trade in Kalea. So my mother looked for someone to help her out, and found one. A man named Creo. He was a loan shark who had it all. A stupid name and a shady beard. 2 lackeys who followed him wherever he went. And above all, a complete lack of what other people would call decency.
I think I can see where this is going.
Sure you can. It's not the most unique of stories, is it? To cut to the chase, 1 year later we were in massive debt. Creo suggested my mother another way of making up for it. You can fill in the blanks. I was just too weak. Over and over this fucking bastard came. Had my mother tell me to go for a walk. And every time I had no choice but to obey. Do you have any idea how that feels? I remember one day I looked in the mirror and realized how much I hated the boy I saw. I hated his body with all its frail bones, his small arms, his bloodshot wet eyes. So the next time he came, I fought back.
How did that go?
What do you think? He beat me up. And it was the same next time and the time after that. At first he found it funny. But after on my 14th name day, I left home and joined up with the Kalaean Sand Prowlers. My mother begged me not to go, but I just couldn't. Standing there and watching this fucking bastard walk into our room again and again whenever he felt like it, I just couldn't. The way I figured it was that if I earned enough money to pay Mother's debts, Creo would leave her alone. Once I was strong enough, I'd come back, wait for him to show up again, and then...
I think I can.
A group of mercenaries. They took me in and trained me. And even though they were skeptical at first, they quickly realized that my determination made up for what my body was lacking. When I was 16 and I discovered my magic, one of their leaders made me his apprentice. The arcane universities are a shithole made up of boy-loving old geezers who care more about how you wear your hair than about your magic. I'll tell you the real thing. And that she did.
What about your plan to pay your mother's debts? Did that work out?
Well, I thought so at first, but we'll get there.
What was it like to work with the Sand Prowlers?
Well, if you were hoping for stories of sex, adventure, and intrigue, I have to disappoint you. Most of it was nasty stuff. Fighting in wars which you knew were wrong, beating up people who were practically helpless. But then again, the Kalaean Guard was no better than that. It was a case of pick your poison.
Was that Sand Prowler mage also who introduced you to demonology?
What? No, she was a mediocre mage at best. The most powerful thing she could do was lighting someone's hair on fire. Though of course she didn't see it that way. After 1 year, I was already stronger than her, and I started my own studies.
So did you ever return to your mother?
Of course, on my 18th name day. I had wanted to return earlier, but a contract had me kept overseas for a lot longer than I had expected. Sorry. It's strange to talk about it.
What happened?
My mother. She was gone. Her room had been cleared out, and the neighbors told me she passed away unexpectedly just 3 weeks before I arrived. Her heart just stopped beating.
I'm sorry.
Why? It was a natural death. She was old when she gave birth to me, and in other words, it was bound to happen. I went into the room and looked for our stash. A small casket under the floorboards. I found it, opened it.
So...
She never used it to pay Creo as I instructed her. I have no idea why, but she was that kind of person, you know? No matter how hard fate punched her in the face, she clung on to her idea, and look what she got in return.
Did you ever visit?
I did, but it was a mass grave. Dozens of corpses, all piled. I threw up when I saw it, and never came back.
What about Creo?
Well, as you can imagine, I went to look for him. Right after
Where?
I don't know. I asked everywhere and everyone who could know. And they either... After a while...
Why?
Because people like Creo are just a reality we have to deal with. I could have killed him, but what good would it have done? My mother was dead. And the world doesn't give a fuck about your ideals, Tahar. I wasn't strong enough when I should have been. And that's why I couldn't help her. That will never happen again.
I see where you're coming from. But without ideals, we'd be...
Yeah, keep telling yourself that. To wrap up the story, I enrolled at the university from the money my mother saved for me. Turned out the Sand Prowler mage was wrong. There were some boy-loving professors, but they knew their shit. I studied and practiced until there was nothing left to study. I quit university, and I've been traveling ever since. Taking jobs as a mercenary here and there, but above all, improving my skills. My last stop was Bargagora to summon a Devour.
And what...
I don't know.
Interesting story.
Sure. Hope you're happy.
Yes, Corporal? How can I help?
Well,
Why do you want to know?
because I want to know my...
I see. In short, my mother sold me. And after an incident, my owner noticed my talents. He started to train me to carry out jobs for him. And when I was 17, he had an accident.
Your mother sold you? But where?
Because she needed the coin, and already had 4 children to feed. And as for your first question, where there is demand, there is a market. Particularly in a big city like Greyfell. It's not as uncommon as you might believe.
You're saying there's a slave market in
Slaves, sex, murdering for pleasure. Just imagine every dark desire you can think. I find it interesting that this surprises you.
I only joined shortly before the Mage Wars started, and the Greyfell affairs were the response. I just didn't.
Well, now you do. I do not agree with the purity of light in most aspects. But they are right when they say there are many sinners in this world.
Even if she needed the money.
Well, to her credit, she didn't take it lightly. At least...
That doesn't make it better. How do you feel about this?
Well, I used to feel strongly about it. Now I've simply accepted it as part of my past. But there are plenty of reasons for...
That's...
Is it?
So, who is this man who bought you?
I won't talk about that. This chapter of my past is done, and I want it to stay buried.
To me...
I am. But it should... So, tell me, Pariah. How did you become the betrayer's child in the first place? It's rare for a child to defy their own father.
That's simple. My father was
A monster? Interesting. What makes you call him that?
He was power hungry. He said his war was about protecting the mages, but it...
Oh. Either way, is there anything else you need?
Got it. would you look at that? Let's see. Interesting.
Unbelievable.
Must be quite a change of...
Yes, you could say that. All my life I dreamed of... Oh well. It will take some getting used to, that's for certain. Weapons, trinkets, all sorts of things I found in the Hibernian ruins over the years. Most of them haven't been used for
I will. Thank you.
Tandai Tahar. Come to trade?
Everything for the wary traveler. Come again. May
What do we
Tiara
need?
bless your path.
Now would you look at that?
What can I do for you today?
I
I had hoped as much. What do you need?
A fair offer.
will do. Interesting.
Tahar, what is it?
There's one thing I've been wondering about. After we parted at the hideout,
Good question. I guess it all started with the relics, the tomes. You remember them, right?
yes, he was
Exactly. And there was this one moment. You see, there were all those bodies. Enemies, but also many of our people. We had shed so much blood, Tahar. And as dramatic as it may sound, that's when I finally understood that we had lost our cause.
And that's the reason Zane, Helena, and I betrayed him. Come on, do you really want to tell us you didn't see that before? The tomes were all about power.
No, you misunderstand. I knew it was about power. But aside, and it's not that far off. I mean, can't you imagine? With the power of the tomes, we could have united the world. Even made it a better one. No more persecution of the deviant. No more wars, no more suffering.
You mean an aristocracy, with a couple of mages playing God?
There's always someone playing God. And honestly, don't you think the world would have been a better place if there were gods who actually cared? But be that as it may, what we can be certain of is that the world the Purity is envisioning would be a far worse one than anything us mages could have ever created.
I'll be off.
Huh?
I want to bu-
Music to my ears. What did you have in mind?
Yes.
Let's see. Yes? What is it?
I've noticed that you use both white and black magic in combat. I've never seen anyone...
Normally, yes. The essence of white and of black magic deeply oppose each other. Trying to combine both of them usually has a similar effect on a mage's mind as at... I, however, never had that problem. The first time I found out was at the Arcane University in Greyfell, where I studied. The white magic spell I had cast on a rabbit. I was very young at that time, and I knew my professor would be upset if he found out, so I channeled my energy on undoing what I had done. As a result, I created an undead rabbit. It immediately went feral, and I put it back to sleep. But rather than feeling the terrible headache that had been described to us as an effect of combining these two schools, I felt I secretly continued these experiments during my studies, and found out that whatever it is that causes this
Do you have an explanation for this?
No, I do not. Maybe it has to do with the way my mind is structured.
Huh. Well, that's odd. Where did you grow up? You don't look...
I do not. That is correct. I grew up in
Imperia?
I know, but I hardly have any memories. My parents fled from the Civil War and set over...
So you were refugee?
Yes, much like many Nortandians are now. We lived in the Utran lands, and my parents are still there.
What's it like to live in North...
Well, it was my impression that Utran people are by nature a lot more skeptical towards outsiders than, for example, the citizens of Everlock. All in all, however, I cannot complain. Both my father and my mother found work quite quickly, and thanks to my occupation as first scholar of the Creators Guild, they now live a quite comfortable life.
And when did you discover your magic?
At a very early age. I believe I was 7 at that time. I must have had an outbreak, but I can hardly remember any of it. All I know is that my mother's employer, who was a mage himself, immediately took me in. I went to Everlight when I was 10, and did not leave there ever since. Until now.
Interesting.
I'm not surprised.
Back when we met, you told me about an internal disagreement, which led to many of the guild...
Why do you want to know?
No particular reason.
I see. Well, simply put, the guild had 2 leaders until half a year ago, me and Lena. Lena and a lot of the other mages felt that they could uphold their neutrality no longer without sacrificing their integrity.
You're talking about the persecution of mages?
Yes, I am. As Lena said, they are crucifying us, burning us alive, putting masks on our heads that destroy our minds. If there's something wrong with the world, it's people who keep their heads down because they are afraid to stand in for what's right.
Well...
In her reasoning, she did. However, her stance conflicted with everything the Creators Guild stands for. We preserve knowledge, push forward the boundaries of magic. We do not involve our... Figuratively speaking, a fisher will never be a good military commander, just like a mage will never be a good politician.
So where did Lena and the other mages...
I do not know. They left to fight the purity and save mages, but I have not seen them ever since.
Could you tell me more about Lena? What was her position in the guild?
She was the guild's treasure master. Other than that, I do not know what to tell you. She was quite young when she joined the guild, not even 24 winters old, and immensely talented. When it came to mental, she was different than the others. She was better than the others. And I always saw a spark of genius in her eyes. And yes, I do know that most people would call that attraction.
Well,
you are an empathetic man. So I would have been. But these events lie in the past. There is no point.
You seem bitter.
As I said, I had hoped for a different outcome.
Could you tell me more about... Of course. But if you ever want to...
I will tell you.
Goodbye. How are you holding up?
Fine, I guess. Thanks for asking. You know, Corporal, I've been meaning to ask you something.
Yes?
Well, not knowing your mother and all that shit your father put you through, do you ever feel lost?
Not really. I've never been too concerned with the...
I wish I could say this. You know, I haven't told you that yet, but actually, save for the fact that my father didn't try to conquer the world, at least not that I know.
How are our pasts alike?
Simply put, I also didn't know my mother. And my father was a bastard if there ever was one.
What happened to your mother?
She died giving birth to me.
I'm sorry.
It's alright. As I said, I never knew her.
I take it you and your father aren't on good terms then?
You are of great wisdom, Tahar. No, I was and still am the only heir of the family. And if there's anything my father ever cared about, it was prestige. You see, it might not be obvious, but I'm actually of pure blood, as Finn and Mir elves call it. Nothing impressive, small nobility. You know, similar to the kind of Nortander nobility that's always around at royal festivities, licking everyone's boots so that they just don't forget about them.
There's nobility in Finn and Mir?
Oh, yes, there is. They don't call it that, but essentially Finn and Mir is an aristocracy.
How so?
Well, as you might know, elven culture heavily revolves around the White Tree, a gift from their... Simply put, the tree is revered and guarded by a group of mages, of seers, called the Council. They're the rulers of our country. Now, according to the ancient lore, when a seer dies, his or her successor is chosen by the Council. However, it has become custom that a seer should be replaced by someone from his bloodline. Someone pure.
Which means they make sure that the power stays within the...
Indeed. And even though elven families in themselves are small, if you count all the cousins, aunts, and uncles, the members of just one council family could populate a whole township. In other words, the closer your blood ties with the council, the closer you are to the White Tree. And thus, the higher your standing.
So I assume your father put you under a lot of...
Yeah, that's one way to put it. I barely had a childhood. It was all stern-faced teachers instead, trying to feed me language, history, math, and magic from the day I could speak. And I can't even remember all those festivities and religious ceremonies I had to attend. It was as if I learned the meaning of the word small talk before I learned how to ask for my mother's teat. Not that she would have been around to listen.
How about friends?
Oh, that's another topic. I was allowed to go out and play as long as it was with the right people. Still, which was my choice, really. One of the few I made in those years. I preferred to stay on my own.
How come?
I don't know. See, I've always felt a bit ahead of others. As you know, we think in other dimensions than you do. What that means is that an elf who has seen 20 winters is still considered and looks like a child. Thus, I just never felt at home with most people, especially around my age. And that feeling never changed.
What was your father hoping to gain from this?
Isn't it obvious? He wanted to marry me off, and thus expand our petty little family's prestige.
If he simply wanted to arrange a marriage for you, then when these things happen in Nortander, it's usually more about...
The looks?
And the ancestry, yes.
Well, these things play a big role in Finn and Mir too, but to be considered a good match, education and for a priest, let alone a pure blood, to be seen with an uneducated, non-gifted street elf is frowned upon, not to say forbidden. Also...
Yes.
Well, this isn't the case in Finn and Mir. If the head of a family decides to do so, a young boy or a young man may have the same fate as the one I just escaped by. This is a topic you could fill books with. Probably not for now.
But it never came to that?
Almost.
I see. Where is your father now?
Dead as a doornail. He got assassinated some years before I was allowed into the priesthood.
Assassinated? What?
He got mistaken for someone else. But it doesn't really matter. Let's not talk about it.
I'm sorry.
Oh, don't be. To be honest, I'm glad he's dead. Otherwise, I would be in bed next to some... You see, Tahar, if there's one thing I took away from all that, it's that there's no greater power. Or, if there is, Murderers live to be 100. Children die in the birth beds. Ultimately, the biggest fallacy is that we like to believe that there's someone who gives a damn. We're on our own, and we have to make the best out of whatever life throws at us. I did. And even though not all worked out as I had planned, I'm here. And I'm free.
But you still feel
Yeah, I do. Anyway, we digressed quite a bit, didn't we? I'll see you around, Tahar. And thanks for listening.
Now would you look at that? Interesting.
Huh?
How did you become...
I was chosen.
And how...
Complicated. Are you sure you want to hear the whole story? Time isn't exactly on our side.
It isn't, but the more I know about your abilities, the better. You're fighting for...
We're not fighting for you, Tahar. We are fighting alongside each other. That's a big difference.
Alongside, then?
Good. Let's make it short, then. Shapeshifting is a gift of Zarek. One that only the best...
And how does one become a shaman?
He has to be chosen by a tribe's chieftain. You see, magical talent is a lot rarer. In my tribe, there was only me and Rain. We both discovered our talent by chance. When I was 9, everybody was asleep. Even the damn fool that had been tasked to stand guard. When I woke up, the entire room...
So it was your magic that woke you?
No, I needed it.
What happened then?
I panicked and started screaming, as every child would have. However, the only thing that did was make me inhale the fumes when I woke up again. I was on a bed of hay in the village shaman's tent. I asked what happened and they told me. Just when I had lost consciousness, it had started to rain. With not even a minute, all the tents in the village had been flooded. The fire wasn't extinguished right away, but was quickly put out by the other orcs that had been awoken by the storm.
That's impressive.
Well, it was also my last successful weather ritual. According to my brothers, I had an orange shimmer in my eyes and was muttering strange words. She told me that was a clear sign that I was gifted and that I had fire in my blood, as my tribe likes to say. All of a sudden, I was my Cal's pride. It was strange, not just for me, but also for...
How did your family take it?
Well, they were proud. But for example, my father stopped taking me out on the hunt because he was afraid that something might happen, which is ridiculous. Also, my siblings became withdrawn. Jealousy, of course, but also estrangement. All of a sudden, their baby brother had become this strange being.
I'm sorry to...
Don't be dramatic. There's worse fates than being the one gifted orc among thousands.
Who trained you?
Yes, but only about her craft. Primitive ghost callings, alchemy, medicine. I woke up every day before dawn, walked for 2 hours, served him, and received my lesson. It was hard, yes, but it was insightful. Those long walks in the darkness, the solitude at the foot of the mountain where his shack was.
Interesting.
Did I? Well, that's complicated.
All right.
No, Tahar. Accept it.
Yes?
To this day, The Shaper's magical and technological prowess remains unrivaled. One thing is clear.
Let's see.
Tahar, may I help you with something?
I'd still like to know more about...
Bugger and blast. And here I was hoping you'd forgotten.
Yes?
That I get to ask you a personal question too.
Then we have a deal. Go ahead.
Fair enough. I was born in the Windwall Mountains. Sorry, still sorting out my thoughts. It's been a long time. Alright, one more time. As you can imagine, I was born...
Come again?
A true dwarf, as some would say. Born in the buried city, not on the outside as the traders and farmers are. My family was quite privileged. Not nobility, but my mother and father led a big smeltery which supplied one of the finest smithies. Moonsil...
I think so. The commanders of the Royal Army...
Figures. Well, my childhood was a rather unremarkable one. I had 2 brothers and a sister. I learned quickly how to wield an axe, and I still know how to do it, but I never took pleasure in it. The same goes for my parents' craft.
But I assume your parents didn't approve of...
Oh no, they didn't mind. I had 3 siblings who could do the job as well as I, so the future of our family was secure. On the contrary, they were quite accepting, which wasn't usual amongst dwarves, especially not those in Windwall.
Are the surface dwarfs different?
Depends. There are some who were very open-minded. For example, the traders who get around a lot. On the other hand, there are some who were as ignorant as the Windwallers.
Dwarves are traditionalists, aren't they?
Oh yeah, they are. They love their brawls, they love their ale, and they love their metal crafting. And they never miss a chance to tell the outside world just...
Well, to be honest, when I think of dwarven culture, that's exactly what...
See? And that's the problem. There's always diversity in every race. There are soft-hearted orcs, there are elves who don't give a damn about the white tree, and there are humans with... Well, you get the point. What I'm trying to say is, many dwarves love living these traditions, but there are some like me who just don't fit in. This is one of the reasons why I appreciate you and this group so... Aenir's tools or not, we're all pariahs, in one way or another.
I guess that's true. So...
I'm getting there, Tahar. When I came of age, I found... It sounds more impressive than it is. Basically just 4 blocky granite walls filled with a dozen bookshelves. Nothing compared to the great libraries of Finn and Mere or even Everlight. That time was also when I deepened my knowledge of the Shapers. I devoured all the books there were, and bought whatever writings the merchants brought in. They smiled at me, talked of me as the strange bird, but I didn't care. The more I read, the more spellbound I became. And the more I dreamed of journeying through Ea.
Are there Shaper ruins in the Windwall Mountains?
Hardly. And those that are there are buried beneath miles and miles of rock. Impossible to access without a huge expedition.
Huh. And what kept you from doing just that?
Well, 2 things. First of all, my attachment to my family. Secondly, Gilak.
Gileak?
My, partner.
You had a partner?
Yeah. We met... I'd rather not go into detail too much. Fact is, we lived together for 6 years. He was very dear to me. Let's put it that way.
What are dwarven families like?
Similar to their human counterparts, I believe. Having family and offspring is considered to be very important, especially if you're of noble blood.
But living with someone of the same sex is acceptable?
Well, yes and no. If you do, you don't talk about it. And you should make sure to find yourself a wife or a husband to found a proper family, eventually, and bring... If you don't do that, you're frowned upon. There's even a word for a childless dwarf, man or woman. Galrag, which roughly translates as dusty boulder. Very amusing, I know.
That's...
Well, I doubt it's going to change anytime soon.
I understand.
Yeah. The Blackstone Rebellion. Ever heard of it?
No.
The rebels were anti-traditionalist and wanted to establish a new order, where it's the people.
Oh.
Yet first, at one point, we had a fight. When he asked me to finally, push came to shove and he told me of the coup. He knew that despite my occupation, I was a remarkable fighter and earthshaper, which is why he asked me to bind me, Alf. He was just so naive. He really thought it would be like in the old legends, a group of courageous dwarfs fighting their way to Algrim Castle with me at his side. Forgive me. It's strange to talk about it like it's a... Yeah, sure. You can imagine how torn I was. I knew he'd die if the coup took place, but I also knew that I couldn't stop him. When I told him he was mad, he called me a coward, a delusional bookworm, who'd rather spend his whole life dreaming about the past than changing the present. And then he left. The next day, I found him beheaded by a royal guard.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Why didn't you tell...
Yeah, they could have. Only to execute him and all his friends the next morrow. Tahar, believe me, I thought about this quite a lot. About what I could or should have done.
What?
I came to the conclusion that I did nothing wrong. He had his mind. In the end, there's only so much...
What happened then?
I ran. Not only because I'd rather have died than returned to that empty house of ours, but also because they would have arrested me too. Our relationship wasn't a secret, and in their eyes, I was as eccentric as Gilak and his friends. And we all know how dangerous it... I left my family a letter, telling them not to come after me, bought a horse, and rode as far as it would take me before collapsing. That was 9 years ago.
What about your family?
Not directly. Every now and then, I return to a big city to find a dwarf who can tell me about Windwall. But the thought of returning, I don't know. I know it's cruel toward them, but...
I see. And since then...
Yeah. If there really is, as people say, a silver lining to everything, then this would be it. I'm finally doing what I was too afraid to do back in Windwall.
What?
There's a third reason to my fascination with the Shapers I haven't told you about yet. It's Gilak. Stupid as it may sound, there's a part of me who wants to prove him wrong. To show him that the past has value. That it can guide us towards a better world.
I see. Well, thank you for sharing this, Iskrim. I appreciate it.
Yeah. It felt good to talk about it. I didn't expect that. But you're not off the hook yet. The question, remember?
Right. Shoot.
Your past is even more unusual than mine. Growing up with a man like Isamu Tahar as your father? Without a mother? And then the whole thing with the Mage Rebellion? I know you've been through a lot. Now, I was wondering, if you could trade that past you've had for a different one, would you do it?
What kind of a past could I choose? Anything?
Anything.
Honestly, I try not to think too much about the what-ifs. I can't change my past, so it's irrelevant.
Yeah. I guess either way, pleasure speaking with you. Hope this wasn't too grim for you, but then again...
Sure. Take care, Iskrim.